Good morning. Okay. Just got a notification that my encoding is a bit over the top. This computer isn't quite doing what it needs to do, unfortunately. But so if I need to go and come back, then I will. Actually, you know what? I might actually like stop and then come back. It's probably better because I'm just going to be sitting there worrying and looking at it the whole time. Seems to be okay. Why can't things just go there? So frustrating. Anyway, all right, let's soldier on. We'll see how we go. Okay. Because I don't want to spend like too much time anyway, because I'm trying to do quicker streams that are only like 30 to 45 minutes each. And that's probably, got to keep soldering on. So, good morning. So I thought I'd do a quick one with Elon Speedrun. I'm going to try to do things because, like by the time I get to it, there's just so much has happened and so much has moved forward. And this is much, just sort of up to where we're at with Twitter, but also just to kind of filter through, sort through what is true, what is not, what's worth, it's so like, feels a little pointless, but here we go. Because, you just sit there and it's like people just, we've seen in the last 24 hours, like what's true is just, it doesn't matter what's true. It matters what spreads and like what people claim is true. And, and honestly, I think given in the last 48 hours or so, I've actually, to X's credit, I've noticed that they've actually been handling things fairly well. Like I think they were on sort of red alert with a lot of this stuff. I was actually noticing that, they were actually like, despite the fact that, autoplay obviously, and some videos were, because X have just introduced a new video player and they set it to autoplay, but obviously much like any other design thing, you go, oh, we hadn't thought about this, which is what happens when, the fact they should have thought of it, but at the same time, autoplay most people are okay with sensitive content, but in a very urgent worldwide event, such as if things blow up in the Middle East or in war or something like terrible happens, that you do have those guardrails in place, and not all users will know to be able to turn on the sensitive content label with their videos, and that's going to cause if they're okay with generally with sensitive content but don't really want the gore and beheadings when war breaks out, then there's a bit of a gap there. But one thing, to their credit, they actually fixed it and patched it pretty quickly, and so that was actually very interesting to see that they seem to be quite quick at handling these things, and they so far seem to have done pretty well. Their ability to handle stupidity, on the other hand, is you can't handle, there's not much you can do about like bad faith takes and stupid people, right? Like I've said before, it's not illegal to be stupid on the internet. And that's always going to be a balance, and there's always going to be tension between speech and reach, right? That's I've talked about this before, the devil's in the details with this stuff. But looking at key events, like we'll obviously have to wait and see what the researchers say down the track, and those that are doing a fair assessment of the situation actually say about it. But I think on balance, they've handled themselves okay in terms of potential risk, in terms of a platform and what that might look like. Now, everyone, obviously, people who are on either sort of side of these things, of these narrative wars and that sort of thing, they're always going to not be happy with. They're always going to. It's never going to be enough. Like we've seen that with our foreign minister, right? With Penny Wong, who our Labor government is. They stand with Palestine, and they, all that sort of stuff. But there's a difference between activism and being the foreign affairs minister, right? And you have to have a fairly, and she gave sort of the party line, which was, we stand with Israel. They have the right to defend themselves, and even then the criticism was, oh well, you told us to told the Israeli government to show restraint, and that was apparently an outrage. And it's like, well, okay, well, I think anybody would agree with the fact that you should show restraint, but then you got the fucking cooked lefties saying, oh well, that was so calm down, everyone, just fucking calm down. So I do try to, but on balance, how X handled this from a product thing. Hang on, Matt. So are you going to come in with bad faith, or are you going to listen to what I've got to say? Because I'm actually saying that there is no easy way of handling those things, and I'd actually say they did pretty well. So because I was actually watching it and watching them fix some stuff in real time that ordinarily would not have been fixed. So it's one thing to say funny things and Musk, but you got to give credit where due. And they actually have handled this pretty well, all things considered. And given, like I said, it's, you can put so many things in place and they're not always going to succeed, right? So, but from what I've, initially I was like, oh, I don't want to see this video again. But that was just the fact that I had the sensitivity filter off and realized that I didn't want to see that. And then I said, well, you can turn the sensitive media toggle on, and it didn't show. But then they actually put in a specific warning that, like this video would ordinarily break the rules, but because it's newsworthy, blah, but it was hidden behind a content warning. And that's a good thing. Like, that's actually a good thing. But of course, the people who report about Elon Musk broke his own rules. No, the video that he shared actually was technically breaking the rules, but was shared because it was newsworthy. He was sharing it to show that this was happening and that how you could manage things. And it's like, there is absolutely no winning your critics over. There is no point. And I've actually come to the view that there is 0 point trying to persuade people who already hate Elon Musk and already decided that everything that he does is terrible and everything that he does is great and everything that he does is the worst because they don't like him. And it's like, I just don't have time for that shit that shit anymore. It's like, I'm going to focus on the actual good and the bad and the ugly or whatever. Like the fact that he's being sued for defamation by that guy, that young kid, that's a bad thing, and the hope that he has to pay for that, right? And so hang on, let me just, I don't care about earthquakes. I'm trying to talk about other stuff. This is a quick show. I'm not going to engage with the chat today because I've got a lot to get through. But So that's what chat. We can talk about that another time off the stream. Sorry, I can't. Because I want to get to my main point, which is that there's absolutely no point in engaging or putting yourself. I've actually started to realize that the second that you start to defend yourself, you've already lost in this propaganda game. Like we've gone through this enough times now to know that the second that the second that someone has power over you where you are on the defensive, you have already lost. And so there is an element of, say what you will about Elon Musk's like personality and being like who he is and all of the fucking negative shit. Okay, cool. I'd like you held up to scrutiny in everything and see how you're characterized by people who hate you. Not many people can withstand that scrutiny, okay? I'm just saying you've got to be able to pass through. No one is all evil and all good and all greedy and all selfish and all that. People have different motivations for things. There's always shades of grey. I'm sure if you ask my ex about me, I'm sure that you'd get a very different picture. If you ask people who love me about me, you'd get a different picture, okay? Because people are mixed bags. And maybe think about what the level of scrutiny that people are subjected to and not take everything just automatically on face value because you don't like a guy. Okay, now that's the context for this because I was going to cover it in the last stream, which was about the Linda Yaccarino at the Recode conference. Now, you need to know a little bit about what the Recode conference is, and it's sort of a little bit more. It's one of those few. Now, I would argue like everything is like. Is compromised at some level. There is some degree of sort of groupthink in everything, right? But the history of the Recode conference is that it's generally a little more freewheeling and a little bit more sort of chaotic. It's less TED talk and more sort of it's very much linked to the sort of the personality and worldview of Kara Swisher. Now, Kara Swisher is an extremely influential tech journalist. She is both revered and tolerated, and like anyone. Not perfect, loved, hated, respected, all those mixed bags of things. And her and Elon Musk go way back. They've got a kind of a strange relationship, and that context does matter in this regard. Okay, and I just want to get you thinking about how both things can be true all at the same time, and just be mindful of those that are just sharing a small slice of something or a clip or I want to sympathise with someone like Linda Yaccarino, who she comes from, she's an ad exec at NBC Universal, right? And if you've worked in the business for any length of time, you'll know that a lot of those people, it's actually quite funny. A lot of these people are used to just taking the stage, doing a pitch, having a room, not having to win a room. They don't have to win the room over because they are in already sort of by nature of holding the position that they have. They already have power, and people aren't necessarily going to, you've already won the room. Okay, you're in a room of people that you don't have to convince or persuade because you're in an echo chamber of people who are like, yes, dear, everything you say is profound, everything you say is great, that's just kind of that culture of sort of the most ordinary, you've seen this with like TED Talk and stuff, where people will just say the most ordinary corporate bollocks and get a standing ovation. It's that Oprah stuff, where Oprah says something that's like pretty fucking obvious, or Dr. Phil, and it's like that guru thing. That's like all the way up through corporate America and, corporations in general and corporate culture. That's one of the things that make corporate culture so unpalatable to me, which is that thing where, you're expected to think that this human being that is of sort of somewhat average intelligence and not a genius, Elon Musk, is also, like that there's some sort of genius, oracle, profound thing because they just happen to be holding a certain job title. Now, it's been really interesting to me to watch that because when you watch Linda in that context, you do see the sort of ego dying a little bit, where this is somebody who's used to having everything that she said celebrated, everything that she has, every idea she's had considered profound, even when it's just sort of ordinary or obvious or average or whatever, right? And that's sort of, it speaks to the sort of the leadership culture in, in corporate life, where as soon as you are sort of thrust out of that, okay, for whatever reason, okay, so you kind of find yourself outside of that bubble, there's a grieving process that happens, that identity quake that happens, where you kind of go, whoa, shit, I don't know, like, am I like as good as I thought? Is everyone lying to me? Who are my real friends? Who do I trust? Remember, she's going through that because the backlash against her has been quite severe in terms of, her decision to sort of leave the media, the corporate media, and go and back, the person who's basically openly declared war on corporate media, right? And it's an interesting thing to observe. If you sit back and you don't have an axe to grind, to sit and watch that is really interesting. But I also, I also watched Yoel Roth. So what happened at the Recode conference was before Linda Yaccarino's presentation, which was, it was not really that hardball. She was definitely she was, on the back foot. But, Yoel Roth was a surprise guest at Recode. Okay. Now that was, Kara Swisher. Like there's some back and forth about how much they knew ahead of time. Some said that she was given like plenty of warning. Some say that she had, known for a long time, well, not a long time, but, a day or so. And that, it wasn't as much of an ambush, okay, as it was just she'd been booked early and he'd been booked at the last minute, and it was like a thing. But there was a little bit of, you can tell that there's a bit of mischief involved, because if you know who Kara Swisher is, you know that there was a bit of fucking mischief involved, which is that she's since flipped quite heavily against Elon Musk. Okay, so her and Elon have always had this kind of tension and relationship where, like most of the tech guys have a tense relationship with her. As the whole industry has those sort of relationships with tech bloggers and tech journos. That, it's interesting. It's interesting stuff. But there's a whole history there. But so Yoel Roth appeared and he was talking about some of this hate speech stuff and dealing with hate speech and, telling his story, which, again, I recommend people listen to. Because I agree with him, but he also cites things like research, like the research that I've talked about, where he, sort of passes it off as peer review when it's actually just not. The methodology is opaque. It's not clear what their criteria is. There's all of these things. So there's sort of somewhat of a thought termination there, which is like, well, you're not being clear about what research, because I can't find it. So what research are you referring to? So they keep referring to this research stuff. And it's like, again, the devil's in the details. Okay. Now, I think Yoel Roth is a good faith guy. Okay, he's a good actor. I think he does the right thing. I think he is good faith. But I also think that good faith people can be co-opted towards certain purposes and objectives, and, which is the fact that Elon Musk has quite clearly declared war on media. And that is the overarching thing here. And this is where you need to understand some of the regulatory stuff, okay, which is around the corporate media, particularly Rupert Murdoch and other large media corporations, and their war on social media platforms in the regulatory sort of setup. Okay. But I'm going to put Yaccarino's interview on, mostly because I find it, mostly because it's cringe, mostly because I already fucking loaded it and I wanted to shoehorn it into something because I've already done all the fucking work for it. But I think I want to see, it was pretty bad. I can empathize with her, but at the same time, you're a CEO, you're being paid to do certain things. A lot of the clips that were being shared from that conference were kind of taken out of context, and what you kind of, again, you got to kind of speak the language and sort of understand the context of the way that, she'd been ambushed, she was pissed off. She's also going through a thing where she's not used to having a hostile audience. Okay. Remember, the whiplash against Elon Musk has been pretty severe, like whether it's caused by him or not. It's, the whiplash against the loss of control from, the various media sort of political interests of Twitter as an asset, right, has been quite severe. It's very interesting to see people walking it back now where they're like actually acknowledging Twitter's problems, where before, basically right up until Elon Musk bought Twitter, they were like, there's no problem, there's no problem. We just like that Twitter's great. There's no problems here. But all of a sudden now they're having, because there is insurmountable evidence of interference with, certain discourse, certain views going out of favor, certain things being, coming to light about how things work operationally at Twitter, right? And those relationships that even the most sort of, bolshy censor probably has at least a little bit of concern over in terms of overreach. Like they've had to walk it back. And so it's always interesting to sit and watch people just nudge back, back, right? And they could just, and then pretend that was their view the whole time. And it's very strange. So I'm watching that happen at the moment, where they qualify it with, Twitter had its problems, but it's worse now. It used to be Twitter's got no problems and the world will end. But also what's been interesting is that since Elon Musk acquired Twitter and made these changes, the thing that's in the headlines is Elon Musk lays off, X number of employees. He's got no staff. He's got none of this. He's got none of this. Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, all those people, they also laid off people. Same amount of people. No one's saying that Amazon doesn't have enough staff now. No one's saying that Facebook doesn't have enough staff now. No one's saying that no one has enough staff now, but that's the narrative they run with because they don't like him. And it's like, well, no, they had, there were still cuts and job losses and hiring freezes and all that stuff across the industry. Same thing with the paid blue check. Musk put in the paid blue check. And everyone starts to follow suit because they're actually good policy ideas, and that's where the industry is moving. And Musk doesn't give a fuck. Like he said, he doesn't. You can't win. I think he's figured out that you can't win against your critics, no matter what. Now, will there be some substantive critique? Yes, of course. Like, I have issues with the way he conducts himself, right? As I've been very clear about. But at the same time, it's like, well, no one gave anyone shit when Instagram offered the paid verification, or Meta offer it for Threads. I've got a paid verified account on Threads as well. No one's given me shit there. Okay, same thing, LinkedIn Premium. No one's ever complained about, LinkedIn Premium shit, but, no one's complained about LinkedIn implementing it or laying off staff or, their algorithms that like suppress people and all of that sort of stuff. Okay. No one's been see, that's the thing about being like the eye of the storm, is that he's actually he's a lightning rod for most of the tech industry who are implementing the same sorts of policies, because that's where like regulation is heading. And he just rips the Band-Aid off and takes the heat while the others just quietly sort of implement those things. Okay. And that's the same thing with it leads into my thing about the removal of links. Okay, and I'll talk about that in a minute, which is that's a good solution. Seems like a good problem to solve. And I imagine the others will follow suit soon. And that's the thing that you don't seem to get, is that, some changes are being made. He just does them faster and quicker and more aggressively, and the others just copy it in the background and pretend to be nice about it, right? And there's an honesty to that. Okay. Now, the only difference is that Mark Zuckerberg isn't calling random teenagers pedophiles. It's like, fucking hell. But it's like, fuck me. Okay. So like this like stuff about Elon Musk is like driving me fucking wild, because it's just like this knee jerk, I hate Elon Musk, therefore there's nothing to fucking, I love Elon Musk, therefore he can do no wrong. It's like, well, no. Do you know what this feature is? What's the actual substance of this? What's the legal framework? What are they trying to do? What are they actually trying to implement here? What problem are they trying to solve at the product level? Oh my God. Oh, it's like, fuck me. It's like, way to go, armchair fucking quarterbacks, or whatever they call it in America. Okay. So, hang on a second. I just got to minimize some noise. Hang on a sec. There we go. So, okay. But let me just get that video up. Where are we? So like this interview with Linda is terrible, and I feel like the thing is, if you watch the whole thing, you kind of see what he saw in her, but I feel like she's just feel like she's kind of having to grieve her old life and see that maybe a lot of the bullshit and the suck ups and all of that sort of stuff isn't real. Okay. It's not easy. Okay. So this was after, so basically, so she started appearing after, after Yoel Roth did a 45-minute presentation on hate speech and how Twitter X is not handling hate speech. Now, again, we've heard that before. I've talked about that before. I've talked about how that provides cover for certain censorship, but it is still important. It's still needed. Okay, and unfortunately, the details matter, and you've got to be suspicious. So anyway,
he doesn't know me. I don't know him. I work at X. He worked at Twitter. X is a new company building a foundation based on free expression and freedom of speech. Twitter, at the time, was operating on a different sets of rules, as said by himself, different philosophies and ideologies that were creeping down the road of censorship. It's a new day at X, and I'll leave it at that.
So obviously she's somebody who's used to just surveying the room, right, for applause, nods, affirmation. You can tell that if you've actually done any of that sort of corporate presenting and speech work much, or workshops or anything like that, she's using tactics that when you're in a room full of people who, you've already won the room over, you'll go, oh yeah, I'm looking for signs of disengagement or engagement or whatever in the audience. And obviously the stuff that she's used to seeing isn't there. And it's just very funny because she's kind of going, all right, she's trying to find her bearings. And I feel for her, right? And what do we got here? I can't remember what.
Elon Musk just announced a new monthly fee for users.
Yep.
And my question for charging all users of X, as he said, and how many users will lose as a result?
Can you repeat?
Elon Musk announced you're moving to an entirely subscription-based service.
Yeah.
Nothing free about using X.
Did he say we were moving to it specifically, or is thinking about it?
He said that's the plan.
Yeah.
So did he consult you before he announced that?
We talk about everything.
It's also, he didn't say that. He actually said, again, he's said this a few times. And then again, this is something that Mark Zuckerberg said. Okay, this is something that a lot of disinformation experts have said, a lot of people in other platforms have said, which is that you can't necessarily fight the bots. Okay, what you need to do is make it more expensive. And that was in the context of that conversation. Again, and he said one of those solutions, which we already know, which is to charge people for it. It's a spitball, it's an idea, it's maybe. But of course, the people who have a vested interest in making all of these ordinary, boring product decisions into some evil thing that Elon Musk did, and they just presented it as true. And it's ironic because they're sitting there going disinformation, misinformation while sharing it. And it's like, that's not what he said. And even if I think maybe he said something that wasn't clear, he then corrected it pretty quickly anyway. It's like, and he just ran with it. And of course, that's not misinformation. That's just journalism, isn't it? Right? And then there's this one, which I just fucking full body cringed on this one.
He runs product. He runs technology. He leads a team of exceptionally talented engineers. And who's kidding who? I don't care what the structure is at Meta, but who wouldn't want Elon Musk sitting by their side running product?
I see a show of hands.
There may be a few show of hands to get the cute chuck, but I would say the percentages in this room are about 99% who would say no to that, and 1% of maybe personal opinion, feelings.
It just reminds me, that whole interview just reminded me of this. Hang on, let me show you.
My fellow Americans, meanings, and sometimes instead of conveying our meaning, they can suggest other meanings and be open to misinterpretation. And because words have many meanings, and what we mean to say when we speak, those words can mean so many different things, we can confuse our own meaning and misspeak. We've all done it. It happens to... Well, yesterday, it happened to me, folks. in a private moment that, unbeknownst to me, was surreptitiously and illegitimately recorded. I misspoke. I'd like now that misspeaking. I did not and never would mean what some people have inferred I meant when I accidentally chose in that offhand moment. I meant to speak purely factually and to imply no inherent criticism of any nature.
There you go. It felt like that. But, you know, it was very much a sort of corporate speak thing, right? But it is really, it's fascinating to watch, but at the same time, I just watch everyone falling for this, like, where it's like they just completely, first of all, they just act because they think that they know how, like, tech products work, and that most people, you know, it's like, oh, yeah, you know, we just make stuff up. Just because you just make stuff up and you just like try stuff doesn't mean that there aren't people who actually know how to build tech products and actually will implement a feature. And it's not just, I swear to God, I think that most of them think that Elon Musk is just like, you know, yes, to an extent he is top down like directive, but he does have like people who design product working with him and work for him. Okay, now how he deals with pushback is another discussion, but I don't give a fuck about that. Okay, it's got nothing to do with it. The thing is that if there is a charitable interpretation of a product feature, which there is with the removal of headlines, okay, and there is a charitable like thing with this conference appearance by Linda, which was that it was a hostile audience with somebody who was used to being in an audience of you know, suckholes and sycophants. And she's had to sort of, you know, she's obviously having to deal with that stuff. Now, I would argue that you should be more prepared for that, for what you're paid, and that's okay. I imagine she'll come back and get her shit together and, you know, I mean, the fact that she's just saying the word user experience like it's profound in 2023 is pretty funny to me as a person who's like, yeah, I think most people know that that's important now. Not as many as you'd think, because most of user experience, it's not user experience, it's a corporate experience, okay? It's not the user. They don't give a fuck about the end user and how the end user is affected by it. But at the same time, it is very funny to watch this sort of, you know, it's the same thing as if Oprah went out and no one knew who Oprah was. And she was just saying the fucking statements and shit that she, you know, the obvious Captain Obvious shit that she says, and like just dying in a room. Like it's just funny, right? But at the same time, you know, again, that's what you're paid for and that's what you should be doing. And you should know this. I just think she wasn't really ready for the blowback, if I'm honest with you. If I could read her body language and, you know, all those other things, and having been in those conferences and stuff where it's just everyone is a suck up and you're used to just everything that you say and everything you do being a great innovation, and, you know, that bubble is awful. Like, watch Silicon Valley, right? That bubble of just like, yeah, it's not good for your sense of reality and especially about your self-perception, okay? If you're in a powerful position, everyone's going to pretend that you're a genius. That's you know how it works, especially in America where, you know, the middle seems to be brilliant. Okay, so let's just say the bar's fairly low. The bar's low for great thinkers. Let's put it that way. So so you know, I find it an unfortunate turn of events. But again, it's like, well, it's easily explained. Again, it's just like, well, does nobody bother to just explain this? Which is that it's a perfect storm of various things. If you're a good faith person, you can go, yeah, that sucks to be heard. You know. Anyway, so, but the main thing that I do want to talk about is the removal of headlines. Now, everyone's pitching a fit about the so when you talk about, so everyone's pitching a fit about X removing headlines, okay? So everyone who's crying about misinformation, disinformation, fake news, blah, blah, blah. Now, so what they've decided to do as part of their product is to only have a tile of an image. So when you post a link, you first of all can't post links to competing platforms, but also you can't post, so when you, in the link preview, it doesn't show the headline or the excerpt. It only shows the image and the domain that it comes from, okay? Now, That is actually, whereas, if you go to Facebook or Google or anything like that, they will show the full snippet. So if you're on Facebook and you see like a news article, you'll see an image, okay? And then you'll see the headline and you'll see a little excerpt, okay? That's called, it's called a preview. The technical term is snippets, link preview. There's all these different words for it, right? Now that's actually been heavily contested, disputed. It's been subjected to regulatory fucking problems for many, many, many years, okay, especially around copyright law. Okay, so one of the things that you may remember back in, it's been going as long as 2014. So in 2014, Spain actually tried to get Google, I believe, was to pay a fee to publishers for the, it's basically called, what is it? Ancillary copyright. Okay, so basically what they did was when you see that link preview, they tried to make it so that the headline that you see and the excerpt that you see, that little preview that you see of that link, that is actually owned by like the person whose link you're sharing, okay? Now, Rupert Murdoch, corporate media, the media cartels of the world, right, have decided that they would like a cut of big tech's money, basically income, right? So you got to remember whose side you're on when you're complaining about certain things. And in this case, if you're defending, if you're sort of against this move in terms of hiding headlines and stuff, and you're blaming Elon Musk for it, you've got the wrong target. Okay, yet again, much like the Russell Brand YouTube censorship thing, you got the wrong target. Tech are actually just showing the end result of these ridiculous laws. Okay, so in 2014, the Spanish government tried to, and subsequently, I think there's been different things where they've had different standoffs. So Google, again, X gets the blame. Elon Musk gets the blame for shit that Google, Facebook, everyone else has done too. And it's like, well, no, it's just they reacted to it differently. Okay, so let me have a look. Where's the Spain one? So Google News, that's right, it was Google News, not Facebook. So Google News in Spain in 2014, right? They withdrew their Google News service from Spain, right, in 2014 because they wanted to illustrate the consequences of these laws, where they would make Google pay something like 10% of revenue to the corporate media publisher. In this case, it was, obviously Rupert Murdoch has immense power, as do corporate media, and not independent journalists. This only covers large media corporations. Okay, so basically, independent journalists don't get paid for referral traffic. Okay, but basically what you're doing is charging people for the person who provides you with the referral traffic also has to pay you because they are technically breaching your copyright by using your snippets. Like, that's an absurd fucking law, okay? And it's something that they keep putting through. As the Australian government had the same standoff with Google and Facebook, and basically Australia it's very different. Whereas Australia, we decided to regulate and say, negotiate. If you don't negotiate, we'll step in, and you don't like that. Okay, so that's been the Australian government's position. It's not necessarily, so the Treasurer has the discretion to step in if they won't figure it out. Okay, that's the main position with the was it fucking too many things? The News Media Bargaining Code. That's right, the News Media Bargaining Code. And so basically it's that same thing. So Facebook and Google also did that in Australia when they stopped sharing news on their websites, because Rupert Murdoch media, corporate media, BBC, CBC, all of these large media companies decided that they wanted a cut of Facebook, Google's revenue for merely posting snippets, because basically they believed that Facebook and Google, rightly, and this is one where Facebook and Google and Twitter and Instagram, all those things, they're on the right side of the issue, which is that, sharing links and link previews is fundamental. Like, it's open data for a start, and second of all, it is it's a ridiculous law. Like, you're not breaching someone's copyright by sharing a link to their site that shows a preview. Okay, so when you're talking about when you share a link to YouTube, or you share a link to, like, for example, the YouTube like you could argue that embedding that YouTube video is a breach of YouTube's copyright by embedding it, right? Which is a ridiculous argument, okay? Because yeah, anyway, but it's the same thing with news, and this is where everyone's just moaning, but they don't have any actual solutions, okay? So there's been this standoff with this online news code, right? So it does, okay, so Isaac Schaefer said, does that include search results or just for Google News? Now, oh God, this is where you get into the weeds on it, because it is, it was Google News for 2014. So the original argument, which again I agree with, was that users were using Google News to read the articles, right? So, I mean, you could argue that something like Feedly or Google, because remember, that was back when Google Reader was a thing, you know, you had all, like, the products were different, okay? So if you can go back that far in your brain and remember how many iterations of Google News have existed since then. You know, same thing with Facebook, where, you know, there's been so many, but I'm trying to remember what specific experience there was back when this started. But basically the argument was that people were reading the articles, you know, taking the articles, consuming it, right, but not going on site, so that, you know, or, you know, obviously the war on ad blockers is related to this as well. You know, like you know, the journalism that's got like takeover ads on it, and, you know, make it an eyesore, you know, like corporate media. There's all of these things where the argument was that basically you're costing them revenue because the users are only scrolling Google News, and using Google News as a newspaper, right? They're syndicating rather than that curated experience that's got ads and various other things and upsells and, you know, all that sort of stuff on, like, say, news.com.au or, you know, or, you know, your standard, you know, Wall Street Journal, whatever, right? And that's why it's like, so that's basically the main argument, was that copyright argument. But then it got drilled down into the snippets. Okay, so if you look at the way that Google works now, this is probably too much technical fucking bullshit, and I probably misspeak because there's so much like it depends, and the timeline. But basically, you know, now you've got Google's, when you Google, you've also got that this where it takes the first couple of results and sort of turns them into an answer for you. So people are not even, and the same things happen with Reddit, where this is how it gets a bit crazy, which is that Reddit are now taking issue with Google. So tech's taking issue with tech because, you know, Google, yeah, it's just so many different things. But it's not so much Google search, but it was more around like the fact that people are using Google News to tailor their experiences versus going to the site where they will have, you know, that experience. Anyway, so that kind of, it didn't really answer your question because it's kind of more of a diversion, but it was also just, so the initial intention behind the law was to make sure that corporate media who are dying, who need to change, who need to innovate, who need to fucking just not create clickbait bollocks, and actually realize that people will actually just pay for journalism, and they're dead, they're dying, go away, no one likes you, you smell. Rather than sort of adapt, they've decided to lobby and, you know, go after Facebook and Google. Rupert Murdoch in particular was a big part of this Google News, the news bargaining code in Australia. So basically the whole argument was Rupert Murdoch doesn't like the fact that Google and Facebook are stealing all his content, because it's such high quality content that everyone loves and isn't a pox on democracy. He's fighting for democracy. Rupert Murdoch, if there's anyone that is fighting for democracy, it's Rupert Murdoch. Okay. But he wants his cut, okay, of Facebook and Google. Now, Facebook and Google basically turn around and said, well, we just will not provide news. A viable answer to this is also to not provide the snippet. So there's an element of malicious compliance in this headline thing, but it's all about also when you are making a product design decision, okay, you don't just make this fix, it's not linear. It's not like that does that. 1 + 1 = 2. It's like there's a whole complex equation and balancing act of different requirements from stakeholders, from, you know, like policy, from law, from, you know, the other problem of sort of misinformation and fake news and people, you know, sharing bullshit 24/7, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And so you've got to be across some of the research and around how and why people share bullshit, okay? and what makes people share misinformation in the first place, which is that, you're kind of looking at, it solves a multitude of different problems at the same time. And Elon Musk has a higher pain threshold for doing the riskier thing, because it's like, well, at this point, that's a hypothesis, because we haven't really done a major platform making a change like this and seeing the impact. So once there's data, it'll be really interesting. But it's a valid hypothesis, right? Which is that people, like, a big part of how people share fake news and why people share fake news, right? So why people share fake news is because of the illusory truth effect. Okay, now that can be broken down into a number of different things. But basically, if you keep seeing headlines, like the psych research backs this up, right? These are things that aren't really contested anymore. So with repetition, okay, if you see a headline, right, more than 3 or 4 times, or a phrase 4 or more times, or, something like emerald mines, or, he doesn't have any trust and safety, those types of things. Like if you just see the headline and repeat, and you have Twitter bots that repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, you make stuff true by repeating it. Put it on Wikipedia. It's true now. That's how it's made. Things are made true. That's through the illusory truth effect, right? But a big part of that is headlines and excerpts, because people don't generally, so the way that the experience was designed was that headlines and excerpts were, you've got that false equivalence there, which is that a headline and an excerpt, it wasn't really showing the source, it was just saying the thing. It was making a statement. So you could have 5 different publications with the same headline, and you start to think that shit's true, because with enough repetition, whether you like it or not, you will just take it as true. Okay, you have to work very, very hard. You have to read the article. Most people don't read the article. They just retweet. They just share mindlessly based on a headline and an excerpt. They don't click through. Okay, now, that is actually the argument that is used for, this C18 bill that's in front of Canada, the news bargaining code in Australia, the same thing in Spain. The EU have got a version of this. This basically the same. And but people basically don't share because they're stupid. They don't share because they're malicious. They generally share because there's not enough friction. There's not. So what some of the research shows that when you actually do put friction back in place, where people have to pause and think about whether it's true, usually they won't share like lies, and they won't share fake news, or they won't share like misinformation or disinformation, and they won't share bollocks from people like Matt Binder and people like, but you've also got to understand how this stuff, balances out. Okay. So, met someone in DD chat from Tasmania who knows you. Oh yeah. I don't know anybody in DD chat from Tasmania, so that'd be interesting. So anyway, I imagine, I don't think, I doubt it, but okay. So basically there's a few different things in place here, okay, which is one, misinformation over here, and what makes people sort of share bullshit. Headlines and excerpts, especially repeated ones, are a big problem. People will just uncritically share that stuff, okay? Over here, you've also got Rupert Murdoch wanting a cut because people are sharing his headlines and excerpts, okay? So from a design point of view, it makes sense, okay, to go, well, how do we fight this bill, right? Which is that you fight that bill, which is, I've talked about this before, with like you do shots fired, bang, bang, shots fired, okay, malicious compliance. You go, well, here's the end result of what us having to pay a link tax looks like. We just won't let you post the links then. That's an option, isn't it? Like there's a little bit of malicious compliance going on there, right? So it's design decisions are not just, it annoys the shit out of me how people think that you just throw mud at the wall and hope it works. It's like, no, these are actually grounded hypotheses. They are based in the research. And if you're actually thinking about the competing things, but also you need to look at the interests involved. So some of the main people that are like going after Elon Musk over this fucking headline removal, Matt Binder, Chief Bollocks Officer, okay, actor, not an expert, but he works for Mashable. Mashable is owned by, Ziff Davis. I always get that wrong. Ziff Davis. I always think of Biff Davis. I don't know. Ziff Davis, okay. Now, if you know Ziff Davis, who was the owner of Mashable, Mashable have actually been involved in legal disputes around this stuff where they're double dipping in a way, because what they actually are trying to do is they've actually gone to court against photographers. So there was a case called Ziff Davis versus Sinclair, and they actually were, so Sinclair was a photographer who took Mashable to court because they embedded her photograph, or their photograph, okay? But it was embedded as an Instagram link. But Mashable obviously made money from that, and that photographer, freelance photographers don't make a lot of money from their photographer. So that person sued Mashable, saying that you owe me money because it's my copyright. And there was a copyright dispute there around embedding of these things, right? So you take Instagram's post and then you embed it. And Mashable were arguing that they, basically for their right, that they had rights to that because they were embedding a link, okay? So Mashable, it's like, and my frustration with this is that they don't declare that conflict of interest, which is that they have a financial interest in preserving the headlines, because Mashable are one of those organizations where they will get paid by media companies, by tech companies. They're fighting the fight, but they don't declare the fact that they actually earn money from you deciding that them removing headlines is shit. Not the fact that, tech companies are having to pay Rupert Murdoch and Ziff Davis and fucking media people like a fortune of their a split of their revenue just for having that link embedded on their site. And so basically, I object to that, because I would argue that Google News, and this is one of the things that happened, right, which is that Google went, all right, then we'll shut it off. We won't provide. They're doing that now in Canada, so we won't have news in Canada then. And then the Canadian government go, well, we'll stop our ads then. And so basically everyone's just sitting there watching and going, all right, well, do you get more money from the referral traffic that comes from Facebook and Google, or who wins here? They're playing a game of chicken, right? Like statistical chicken or data chicken, right? To see who's right. And a lot of this stuff is basically, Twitter, X, okay, they're not technically like under the purview of the law, but you need to assume that if you are a VLOP, very large online platform, that seems to be the new standard. VLOP, okay? So while Twitter X is technically not currently having to pay for snippets, it's not an unreasonable thing to predict down the future that they would fall under that, okay? Especially if they're presenting themselves as a news outlet. And, Musk is going to say, well, I'm not paying you to fucking destroy my platform, which is what they've done. Okay, you understand? So you kind of walk through that reasoning and you go, okay, well, what does Matt Binder do all day? He makes up lies about Elon Musk, and they repeat lies. Especially the US corporate media, just repeat bullshit. They use those headlines. And often, they'll even make a headline, and then once that headline has gone viral, they will change that headline so that again, they take advantage of this repetition, that illusory truth effect, where enough repetition and enough of those sorts of things where people just take stuff as a given and take it as true, such as Elon Musk is making you pay for Twitter when he never even said it. Okay, well, he said it, but it's not what he meant, and he clarified it straight away. And anyone who's in good faith knows what he meant, because everyone's talking about it. Mark Zuckerberg did an interview at Recode, and he said the exact same thing, which is that you can't fight fucking, inauthentic behavior without charging or making it expensive for them to do so, and you need a barrier to entry, right? You literally cannot, that's the problem with open source tools, okay? We've talked about this before. But, like Mashable, you got to remember that Mashable have a commercial interest in making sure that these links appear, with their bullshit made up lies about Elon Musk and their bullshit made up lies about, whatever. We've got an election coming up. They have a vested interest in people and they guarantee, and they bank on people only reading the headlines. But they also bank on the fact that if those headlines and excerpts are actually available, that they get paid. So that's like they need to declare their conflict of interest there. But of course they're not. Of course they're not. Because that would be, that would mean that you had to be a good and honest actor, okay? I have no conflict of interest other than just being in tech. I don't make any fucking money. I don't give a fuck. I'm just a normal person who's frustrated and, has designed products and is a UX designer who knows this stuff inside out. And I can reverse engineer sort of where the thought process was. And I'll always find the most charitable reason for it rather than, I'm just going to do something stupid and evil because everyone who thinks I'm stupid and evil is going to, it's like, grow up. Okay. But it's like, so it is around that ancillary copyright. It is related to this Canadian, because, when you're actually paying attention to the legal landscape and the regulatory landscape around this stuff, you have to anticipate that at some point Twitter's going to have to pay a fortune for those link previews, because that's where the absolutely incompetent regulatory stuff is going. Like that, it's a terrible law. It's a nonsense law, and it's and basically it's like, well, okay, well, I'll do the bare minimum, but also it has the benefit of putting friction in place so that people won't will have to pause. They'll have to click on it. So I would actually argue there's a valid hypothesis that they will generate more referral traffic that way. Rather than people just responding and reacting and engaging to the headlines. Okay, people will click through and see what it is. Okay, that's a good thing. I would argue that it's actually the opposite. Now, someone said actually, oh, well, you just embed text in the image. It's like, yeah, we've been able to detect text in image for years, and I imagine that there'd be some way of processing those images and making sure that they are in compliance. And you probably just get deboosted if there's text in it, like Facebook do with your ads. You've been able, with a Facebook ad platform, they've detected that you can't have more than 10% of text in an ad, and they've had that in their ad built in since, God, as long as I can remember, since the ad platform first launched, they've had that there. So you're not going to get around it. Okay. Now, obviously, does this affect individual people? Yes. And what I would suggest is that you just make sure that you have a great image and a compelling image, and you put the effort in to craft a good tweet, and you all of those sorts of things. I think that's always been the best way to do things. And but I think that it's like, well, okay, has anyone ever even thought about the fact that this might actually just be malicious compliance with the link tax? Of course not, because they don't even know. And those that do know are lying to you because they have a benefit. They actually stand to profit from deliberately misleading you on this, which is the fact that they have an interest. Literally, Mashable have been in court saying that they have the right to pass off an independent photographer's work and profit from that because of that very rule around copyright and embedding and snippets. Okay, so it's like, well, that seems to me like you want to double dip. You benefit from just don't be so trusting of these people. Like, I don't understand. Like, Matt Binder is like, and also he's the biggest spreader of bullshit. Like that crew are the people who just make stuff up. And people just repeat headlines, and then I spend all my time trying to debunk the bollocks that's come from their headlines most of the time. So if they get a little penalty for that, then good, because it's just not true and not what happened. And also, you're not entitled to a link back. You're not entitled to, I would argue that, Facebook and also don't forget, Twitter, Facebook, Google, they have paid. They just want you to pay for it. If you want reach, pay for it. You want free reach, pay for it. Fair enough. I don't know what it's like. Well, yeah, okay. Now, in terms of the user experience, is it not? It's not ideal. I mean, obviously, you want to get a preview. You want the link preview. Also, don't forget that's just what you used to. Okay, we've always, like in the old internet, we always had, hyperlinks. We didn't always have the visual link previews. Okay, we didn't always have those embeddings. It used to just be that you'd click on a link and not know where you were going, and that was the experience. Now at least you get an image, right? But it's some looking at what the actual domain is. And, the people that are set, at the end of the day, they can just put the headline in the body of the tweet. But there is another benefit to that, which is that they have more control over that. They don't have control necessarily over the cards themselves or the headlines themselves, but they do have control and filtering and the AI detection tools for things like coordinated or inauthentic behavior and, spam bots and, all that sort of stuff and coordinated spam campaigns. They can use, if they are doing the same headlines over and over again or, all that sort of coordinated stuff, that will be more easily detectable if it's in the body of the tweet, rather than, them doing that shifty bollocks, which is like changing the headline stealthily and those sorts of things, right? So there's lots of different ways to do that, but they're trying to combat, it's just bad actors who are bad actors who benefit from being bad actors. They benefit from lying to you, but they pretend to be the good actors and they leave stuff out, which is that, it's easy to change. Like, yeah, okay, there's a sound reason, both policy, compliance, and from user experience in terms of people sharing misinformation, like tackling the automatic sharing, unthinking sharing and retweeting of stuff. It's a sound hypothesis. We don't have data. I imagine 6 months from now, when we have data after the change, it'll be interesting to see. And I imagine that if the hypothesis is sound, that the data will have some interesting results in it, and then you refine the product. It's how you do things, okay? But of course, you have an iPhone and a Twitter app, you know everything about tech. I'm sure you do. Okay. And then, it's not like it's not like building product or designing product is difficult. It's just code. You just need an engineer. It's not like it's a delicate, balanced process, multidisciplinary, that requires a knowledge of user psychology, design, and, nah, she'll be right. Elon Musk just makes stuff up. And if you don't like Elon Musk, so it's a bad decision. That's where we're at. And also, I think, honestly, from yesterday, I feel good about it. I feel like they actually, again, I'm sure that I haven't really looked into things because I've been busy, but from what I saw yesterday, I was sitting there watching and seeing if it would crash and burn in terms of, because obviously violent imagery and that sort of stuff. As soon as I changed my filters, it was fine. Obviously, like, again, people being, as much as my reflex is to nuke every stupid idiot with an opinion into the sun, that was stressful and annoying, and all the bots and stuff, but that's a normal thing. Playing bot or human and, all that sort of stuff, like, things are going to be tense. But in terms of what the team could do, they did actually a really very good job. Honestly, I think that they did well. And I haven't seen, again, like, there was a period there where the autoplay thing was circumventing the safety filters. But again, he opened up and said, well, we're fixing that, working on that. So anyway, I'm going to go. It's been an hour and I said 45 minutes. So I need to stop squeezing too many things into a stream. But an hour's way too long now, but I'll be back on Wednesday. I'll be talking more in detail about the Canada online safety thing, online regulation, because of the regulating podcast. And I'm seeing the right-wingers start to just misrepresent that as well. Because the problem, they're actually, some of the things are terrible laws, like this one, the C18 law, terrible. Not all of it, some parts of it. Okay, no, obviously not all of it. But, this part of C18 is particularly terrible because it doesn't make any fucking sense. And also, like, no one's declaring the fact that Rupert Murdoch and like the media cartels are the ones who benefit. It's not independent journalists. It's not anyone other than, media, like massive global corporate media, who are the problem with fake news and misinformation. And so Elon Musk is somewhat sort of, Elon Musk's team at X, who are actually quite competent individuals, despite the fact that they look like they're all 18 years old. I don't know if there's any adults running the joint, but they seem to be doing okay. So let's wait and see. They did okay. It's an impossible situation to begin with. So let's see how we go. But anyway, I'm going to go. Thanks for watching. I'll be back on Wednesday. Take care. I'm tired. I've got to go do an assignment now, and I will be back again. Bye. Thank you for your precious life seconds. Bye. Way to go. We're frozen. That cat's face.